Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you some more about using if statements. Now, if you watched the last video, I basically gave you guys an introduction into using if statements, and we had a couple different Boolean variables, and we were checking to see if they were true or false. And in all these different situations, we were basically printing something different onto the screen. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys some more about using those if statements, and we're actually going to use things called comparisons. So we're going to use these different comparison operators in order to create if statements. So what I want to do in this tutorial is create a method. So I want to make a Java method, and the whole purpose of that method is going to be to figure out the maximum number. So I'm going to be able to pass this method 3 different numbers, and it'll just spit out whichever is the biggest. So down here in our program, I'm going to make a new line after this public method, and I'm actually going to create another method. So we're going to say public static, and I want to give this a return type. So this function is going to return an integer value. So I can say public static int, and we're just going to call this max. And what this will do is, like I said, we'll pass it 3 numbers, and it will return the largest of the 3 numbers. So over here, we're going to give this 3 parameters, and I'm just going to say int num1, int num2, and int num3. So we're defining these 3 parameters. So now inside of this method, we can actually write all of our code. So I'm actually going to use an if statement in order to tell which of these numbers is the biggest. So we'll come over here, we'll make an if statement. So I'm just going to say if, and inside of these parentheses, we need to provide a true or a false value, right? We need to give this a condition. And what I want to do is use something called a comparison. So in order to get a true or false value, I'm actually going to compare 2 different numbers. So I'm going to say if num1 is greater than or equal to num2, and num1 is greater than or equal to num3. So this is going to be my condition. And you'll see over here, instead of just putting in like a true or a false value, I'm putting in a comparison. So I'm comparing num1 to num2. I'm basically saying if number 1 is greater than or equal to number 2, and number 1 is greater than or equal to number 3. This comparison is actually going to end up being true or false. So this is going to end up being a true or a false value. And over here, we're using a comparison operator. So I'm checking to see if it's greater than or equal to, and that's called an operator. So if num1 is greater than or equal to num2 and num1 is greater than or equal to num3, then we know for a fact that num1 is the biggest. So I can just return this. I'll just say return num1. But that's only if num1 is the biggest. So if this isn't true, we want to check to see if num2 is the biggest. So I can say else if, and inside of here, we're going to give this another condition. So we can say else if num2 is greater than or equal to num1, and num2 is greater than or equal to num3. So in this case, num2 would be the biggest. So we can just return num2. And finally, if num1 isn't the biggest and num2 isn't the biggest, then we can be pretty sure that num3 is going to be the biggest. So now we have our entire method written out, and we're able to cover every situation, right? So in the situation that num1's the biggest, we have that covered. In the situation that num2's the biggest, we got that covered. And finally, we got num3 covered. So this is a complete method, and let's test it out. So I'm going to come up here into my main method, and I'm basically just going to print out to the screen. So I'm going to print this method out onto the screen. So we'll print the integer that gets returned to us out. So I can say max, and I want to pass this 3 numbers. So we can just pass it 3, 4, and 5. And what this will print out is the biggest of these 3 numbers. So we should get 5. And you can see we get 5 over here. So if I made num2 the biggest, it's going to be able to handle that. And if I made num1 the biggest, it's going to be able to handle that. So we're able to handle every single situation, and we have this awesome method. So really the point of this tutorial was to introduce you guys to these comparisons. instead of just putting a true or a false value inside of the if condition, we can actually compare different values, and that will give us the true or false values. So this comparison is either true or it's false, right? It's gonna resolve down into a true or a false value. Same goes with this one over here. And we can use these comparison operators in order to check things. So in addition to just having greater than or equal to, we can have equal to. And so this double equals is gonna check to see if these numbers are the same. We can have not equals, and this is gonna check to see if they're not equal. So the comparison num1 not equal num2, that's gonna be true when the two numbers aren't equal to each other. We can also just have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and all of those are gonna allow us to compare different values. So that's the basics of using comparators with if statements. I hope you guys learned something, and hopefully you can create a little max function for yourself. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Draft Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Draft Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to draftacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.